Well, thanks for joining us here on Agri-Pulse.com, and quite frankly, it's been a while. Those of you used to watching our Washington Week in Review videos, we certainly appreciate your patronage. I'm Spencer Chase, as always, joined by Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, and we're not going to be doing a Week in Review video per se. Rather, we're going to be looking ahead the next couple of months on Capitol Hill. As I'm sure you know, Congress wrapping up its August recess here will be joining the fray on Capitol Hill next week. I believe they're scheduled to be back in town on Tuesday. Right. So with that in mind, September, October, November, and December are going to be action-packed in Congress. A lot of things that are relevant, especially agriculturally speaking, the next couple of months. And so the next couple of minutes, Phil and I are just going to kind of break down those things. And starting off immediately, the main topic for Congress is going to be avoiding a government shutdown and what they're going to do over the course of the month of September. And Phil, what's that going to look like for agriculture?
Okay, it's big and important for for several reasons. First of all, Congress has to fund the budget, fund the government. The 2015 fiscal year ends September 30th, at the end of this month. What they will probably do is pass what's called a continuing resolution. It's a stopgap bill, if you will, that will keep the government operating at the current levels into the new fiscal year for possibly weeks, several months. It looks like it'll probably be until December when they actually can reach agreement on a permanent bill for fiscal 2016. There's the spending levels are important for a few reasons. Probably most notable for agriculture is the funding for the Food and Drug Administration for implementing the Food Safety Modernization Act. This is a law that was passed about 5 years ago to increase both standards in the inspection of foods, which is most foods. Regulated by FDA and also imported products. These rules are regulations are just starting to roll out over the next several months from FDA, and they say they need significant increase in funding in order to do all the training that's necessary and increased inspections. The other big reason that this bill is important to agriculture is that it is the vehicle, if you will, the way that Congress, the Republicans in Congress want to deal with a number of regulatory issues. They would in particular like to block the administration from implementing the new Waters of the U.S. Rule. There are some other issues with the Endangered Species Act and a number of other regulations, dietary guidelines, or some language that they would like to put into law to restrict how the new dietary guidelines are written, and several other issues as well. Those will have to be most likely addressed through a grand bargain on a spending bill probably later this year.
And we could be here all day talking about the list of issues that could possibly be facing an appropriations rider. So we are going to move on, and because there are a lot of other issues that are going to be on Capitol Hill in the next couple of months. One of them being child nutrition, and that is something that is also due to expire. The Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010 set to expire at the end of September. And as our subscribers know, earlier this week, myself, Phil, and other members of Agri-Pulse staff had the chance to sit down with Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack, and when asked about child nutrition, he stuck to the administration's hard line about why these programs are important.
There's no doubt in my mind, based on surveys, that parents like what we're doing, kids for the most part like what we're doing, schools by a significant percentage are complying with what we've asked to do, and there are a number of reasons beyond just the nutritional value of all of this that really necessitate us keeping the faith with this effort. The reality is, if September 30th comes and goes, we still have the programs in place by virtue of how they've been authorized in the past, but it would be nice to have a reaffirmation of the importance of this effort.
So then, Phil, with what Secretary Vilsack just said and with what the state of play has been on Capitol Hill, I mean, what do you see going forward in the month of September? Because as Secretary Vilsack said, these programs are permanently authorized, and so something will continue after September. What will that something be?
Well, the Senate Agriculture Committee has scheduled votes on a new bill on September 17th. The chairman of the committee, Pat Roberts, and the top Democrat on the committee and former chairwoman, Debbie Stabenow, have been working on some kind of, working out issues, some kind of deal to reauthorize the law and possibly give some additional flexibility to schools, to food manufacturers in order to give them a little bit of relief around the edges to the standards. Now, it's very important, and I think the Secretary made this clear in his remarks to us, that they stick to the basics, the higher standards that have been put in place as a result of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act.
So it'll be certainly interesting to keep an eye on that. Of course, a lot of school nutrition professionals have been raising a little bit of a fuss about things like sodium requirements, whole grain requirements, things like that. So that'll be contentious issues going forward. Shifting gears a little bit here and talking about the subject of GMO labeling. Now, you may remember in June or July, I forget the exact month, but anyways, the House has passed the Pompeo bill, the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act. And so that moves over to the Senate, still waiting on companion legislation for that exact bill. But it has been long thought for a while that 2015 was going to be the year of the food fight in Washington, because we're seeing all of these individual states doing GMO labeling laws. And when asked about the subject, here's what Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack had to say.
If the Vermont law goes into effect, then the marketplace has got to make certain decisions about what happens in Vermont. And those decisions may accelerate what Congress has to do, or may basically give Congress the ability to take a pass on it. We just don't know at this point what the marketplace is going to do. But what we do know is that if we have multiple states doing different actions of this nature, you're going to create such confusion in the marketplace that costs are going to go up, supplies are going to be limited, and it's chaotic. It doesn't have to be. And the challenge here is to find a way, again, to satisfy the need to know, but to do it in a way that doesn't convey the wrong impression.
Now, Secretary Vilsack also told us that he doesn't feel the Pompeo bill in its current form has the votes to pass in the Senate. He doesn't think he can get over that 60-vote cloture. So, Phil, with that in mind, what are you anticipating seeing in the coming months in regards to GMO labeling?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. It's been pretty clear that they did not have the 60 votes that they would need to move a bill across the Senate floor. There are other options. This is something that could get dropped into a big spending bill at the end of the year, as is child nutrition. That's always something to keep in mind, and one of the things that's important about that spending bill. The industry has been focused, I think, still on getting those Democrats on board at some point. There's been a lot of negotiations going on behind the scene on the bill. Hasn't been introduced, as you mentioned, yet in the Senate. So we'll have to see. Another thing that was important that the Secretary mentioned is this, we talked about, is this Vermont, the first state labeling law, and this is really what's driving this whole effort in Congress, takes effect in the middle of next year. That's in Vermont. And that's really the real deadline. The Secretary, was interesting that he said it's not real clear. It could go either way. This could be the thing that says, Congress, you've got to do something, and really pushes them over the edge to do it. Or maybe it doesn't cause a disruption somehow that the industry is worrying about, and Congress takes a pass. Or maybe Congress takes a pass because it can't agree on anything. We'll have to see.
And just three more issues that we want to briefly talk about that are going to be big issues here coming forward. First one being highway funding. You may remember that was kind of a contentious issue at the end of July, with the House passing a short-term extension, the Senate wanting to do a long-term bill before the August recess. What ended up happening was a 3-month extension of highway funding, covers August, September, and October. So they've got time in September to work through the budget issues. And then by the end of October, they need to have some kind of solution with highway funding. Do you think we're going to see a long-term bill by the end of October, or are we going to have another extension?
Well, I think there's a good chance this is another one of those issues that won't finally be settled in December. There's a lot to do. The House is committed to writing its own bill. I think we'll see action on that very soon. Actually, a lot of work already going on behind the scenes. But it's going to take some months probably for the House and the Senate to agree on a final bill. Big differences over how to fund it. And so I think you could easily see that October deadline that's now extended into December.
And also in regards to country of origin labeling, that's been a long-term subject, but the World Trade Organization is set to hear arguments from U.S., Canada, and Mexico as far as they're at this point they're not debating the legitimacy of the rule anymore. What they're talking about is, if retaliatory sanctions are going to be approved, and if so, how much. So there is still time, proponents will say, for the U.S. to withdraw its rule, and that is the only thing that Canada and Mexico seem to be willing to accept, is a complete withdrawal instead of the withdrawal and the insertion of a voluntary program, an effort that has been discussed in the Senate. So between now and December, there might be some action on country of origin labeling as well, because as we mentioned, hearing those arguments September 17th, and then ruling is anticipated at some point in November. The World Trade Organization is not known to be the best with deadlines, but I would imagine if they hear arguments in September, they will have a ruling issued by the end of December. And also another huge issue for agriculture, specifically in the agriculture and small businesses in general, the Section 179 and tax extenders, generally speaking. There was a little bit of action.
Credits, another one of those.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of action on that in the summer. So the Senate has got a bit of a head start on the issue. Do you think we're going to see any action on tax extenders before? And if there is action, will it be longer term or a simple another year extension?
Well, Congress always seems to gravitate toward the easier thing to do, and that would be a one-year extension, which actually would mean reviving them for 2015 and then kicking the rest of it into 2016. Now, the Senate Finance Committee approved a 2-year extension that would basically push this through 2016 into the next Congress in terms of renewing them. The House House leadership has been fixed on doing a permanent extension of these tax benefits. That's very expensive, not likely to happen. It would take some kind of broad agreement on tax reform. The easiest, most likely thing to do, and this probably is not a whole lot of comfort to a lot of our listeners, but they probably shouldn't be surprised if this doesn't wind up being another December extension for 2015.
And House Ways and Means Chair Paul Ryan has said publicly that he is interested in doing a longer-term comprehensive tax reform before the end of the year. Whether or not that will be accomplished remains to be seen, as do a lot of other issues that we will certainly be keeping an eye on throughout the rest of the course of this year. You can certainly count on us for all your agricultural policy coverage on Capitol Hill. For Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.